I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings, Arnold.
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends Podcast. I have a very special guest with me this week, Miss Barbara Outland Baker, who wrote the book Arnold and Me back in 2006. So we've got her on the show to talk about the book and about her relationship with Arnold way back in the 60s. How you doing, Barbara?
I'm doing great. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I was just saying I really enjoyed your book when it came out. It's really an insight into Arnold, and, you know, all of us in the bodybuilding world, we sort of idolized Arnold as our hero and everything from what we read in the magazines and seen in Pumping Iron. But, you know, reading your book gave us a real different perspective because you had a real life relationship with him for many, many years when he first arrived in this country.
Yeah, that's right. And so many people have given me that feedback. It's like, this is so personal. I just can be there. And it was like reading a novel where their characters come alive. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fascinating too because, you know, we know Arnold as this really driven bodybuilder who was the king of bodybuilding, and we saw that in the movie Pumping Iron, and we saw his personality and stuff, and you alluded to all that. And one of the things I really thought was interesting in the book was really how driven Arnold was and how every July 1st he would make up his list of goals. And that was really kind of motivating for me to read that again.
Yeah, he was, as I've said, he was just the most goal-oriented person I have ever known.
Yeah.
And he really accomplished every single thing he wrote down. And then on top of that, he accomplished things that he never would have thought because of all of that. You know, it got him to a different level. Oh,
yeah, yeah. Well, let's start at the beginning. You were born in San Marino, California, right?
Yes.
And you were working at Zucchi's Delicatessen in, I believe it was July of, was it 69?
Yeah, 69.
69, okay. And then Arnold came in with Robert Kennedy, which I totally forgot about that until I read your book again. That was the publisher of Muscle Mag International. And I forgot him and Arnold were old friends. So they
were, yeah.
They came in together, and Arnold kind of hit on you. He asked you for your number.
Well, yes. Apparently, he had seen me other times he had come in. I just saw kind of a big lug. I never gave him a second thought. But this time, he came over to the counter where I was, of course, eating like probably a hamburger and French fries. And he just had a very funny line to ask me for my phone number. And it's like, oh, do I do this? Well, it is my last summer of college. So, you know, I decided to give it to him.
So did you know anything about bodybuilding back then? Probably not, right?
Oh, no. In fact, I had seen a bodybuilder in Long Beach. That would have been after my high school graduation.
Okay.
So all of my childhood girlfriends were on the beach in Long Beach. And by now, what I know a bodybuilder to be, this guy was pretty skinny, but he definitely had muscles. And we just stared at him and laughed at him and joked about him. So I didn't know. I was just completely naive. And in a way, that's kind of why Arnold preferred me to gawking at him, because I really loved him for who he was.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought it was interesting also your first date, because that happened on the day the astronauts went to the moon for the first time.
Yeah, really. I mean, what's the timing of that one?
Right.
So he arrived and I was watching the television. I said, come on in. And of course he was late. He'd gotten lost. And it's like, it doesn't matter, you know, just come on in. And we watched the moon landing together. It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. What did he think about that, being an immigrant to the country?
Oh, you can imagine. I mean, just the technology and the adventure and the accomplishment and the engineering, he saw all of it, and he was very impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've always read, you know, when Arnold said he was growing up in Austria, he was fascinated by America and he couldn't wait to get here. So that was pretty wild that, right when he got here, that's when we arrived on the moon.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, he'd gotten here, gosh, do I recall, even a year earlier
68
from
right?
Joe Weider. And so he knew this and that, but it was really interesting for him to meet a woman who was kind of current event oriented and collegiately oriented. And so he just loved having our conversations. And, I could tell him about everything from music to culture.
Yeah. So you guys dated that first summer, and then you went away to college, right?
Yes, only to San Diego State. So it was only 2 hours away.
Okay.
But I went away really essentially broken up from him because we just had a disagreement about sexual mores. And so I was devastated. I was just, it was either my values and morals or him. Yeah. And so I chose my essence, but I missed him so horribly. And obviously we got past it.
Right. So what was it about you, Barbara, that attracted you to Arnold? Was it he was just different than everyone else? It wasn't just because he was a bodybuilder. It was just he was so unique, right?
Yeah, he was absolutely unique. And I really, it's not that I didn't like muscles. I just didn't know about muscles. But once I looked at who was in front of me and saw the structure of his body, it was aesthetic to me. And eventually when I went to see the Michelangelo's David in Italy, it's like, okay, I mean, Arnold's even more beautiful. So I really converted to see that if you do structure correctly, like Frank Zane, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So there was that. And then, because of the physical strength, I think what I saw was an equal internal mental strength. He was hysterically funny. And, he really didn't speak very much English. So when he would swear in English, it was, to me, it just like, as we used to say in the day, it cracked me up, It was really funny to hear him swear. And he just was, good-natured. Yeah. He was well-rounded. He wasn't like the muscle thug who didn't have any other conversations besides barbells. He was really a very interesting and intelligent man. Well, he is.
Yeah. Now, back then when you guys were first dating that first summer, did he reveal to you what his plan was? I mean, what did he say he was doing as far as his life was concerned?
Yeah. Well, it came out as he kind of revealed himself. I don't know. Again, I mean, he achieved heights that even to him, it would not have been possible.
Right.
But I knew that life would go beyond bodybuilding. And so that was our beginning in 69. And then 75, I think. That's when he made Stay Hungry.
Yeah.
I might be a little rusty on my years, but
yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, is he going to finally calm down from bodybuilding and then we can finally get married? Mm-hmm. And then I could see that, no, this is just going to be a brand new career. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be second fiddle again. And anyway, that was at the time that we finally broke up because I just knew that what my dreams were not his dreams.
Yeah. So when you were going to college in San Diego, he was living in LA area, like Venice, Santa Monica. And
right.
He would bring you in every weekend, right? He would fly you in and you guys could spend the weekend together when you were dating.
Right.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, he flew me up and it was just very exciting, going to the airport, and I'd have my sorority sister roommate drop me off and she'd pick me up, on Sunday night. And it was just like high culture for me, it was like, wow, this is amazing that a boyfriend is willing to pay for my round trip.
Yeah. And also at that time, wasn't Franco living with him? So you had to go along with him and Franco, right?
Right. Yeah, pretty soon on, we went to the airport to pick him up. I mean, it was that summer.
Yeah.
So I'd only known Arnold, I don't know, I'll say a month before Franco arrived.
Oh, okay. So it was real quick. Yeah.
Really a quick turnaround. I mean, Arnold had been here a year, and he talked Joe Weider into saying, look, I need a training partner. And so Joe was not an easy businessman, but Arnold absolutely knew how to negotiate and get what he wanted, and he wanted Franco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the really interesting things I thought was in the book was how you were kind of delving into Arnold's childhood. And did you go back to his office when he was governor and you were interviewing him a little bit and you were talking about his dad and stuff?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're right.
And then you were slowly like figuring out how his relationship with his father was and also with his brother. And you said that when he moved to America, he kind of replaced those people in his life with Joe Weider was like the new father figure and Franco was like the new brother. And so you could see that happening, right? Even before you really knew his origins.
Right. I mean, I wasn't as keen psychologically as I grew over time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Joe completed that picture to say that I was Relly. I was his mother, you know. So he replicated his family in his choice.
Yeah.
And then he continued to have father figures, and he's just so close with guy friends that I mean, certainly you can't compete with Franco. That was just definitely his best friend.
Yeah.
But he has always had very close friends, whether they're Germans or, well, bodybuilders of all types and, you know, nationally. Mm-hmm. So he did recreate what he lacked in his childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really interesting. Was Arnold forthcoming in telling you about his relationship with his dad when you guys were first dating, or did that take a while to get into that?
You know, initially it was just, I don't even need to talk about him. Yeah. There was nothing there. So he was pretty dismissive. And then of his brother, he said, you know, we just weren't close. So I care for his girlfriend, Erica. And then at that point, I think within a year, within a year. So Patrick must have been born already, his nephew.
Right.
And he always loved Patrick from the get-go of having met him. And I think we went over there, 2 years into our relationship.
Yeah.
And Patrick was just one adorable blonde. Oh, he just, you can't have a cuter kid.
Right.
And Erica was just the sweetest thing, but she had lost her boyfriend to a car accident. And that was that. I mean, she was not even a widow because they hadn't been married, but you really felt for her that she had lost the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And the father of her son.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the interesting parts of your book, too, was when Arnold came back from his trip and he hurt his knee. He was on crutches. And he came to your apartment. And I think you were really hoping for a reunion between the two of you because he was gone for a while and you were looking forward to getting married. And he was very pensive during dinner. And then at the end of dinner, he just said, "My father died."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have good reading comprehension. Yeah. It was like, okay, here I am expecting like an engagement proposal.
Yeah.
And I'm here. Boom, after dinner, you just happened to tell me that very solemnly. I mean, how could you, even though he didn't have a close relationship with his father, you can't deliver that news without just feeling some real sadness.
Yeah.
And so he did show that. But as you know, in reading the book, he was training. And of course, at that point, training was just like everything. Mm-hmm. And he didn't understand the compassion that he would now, that his mother was kind of alone, I mean, Erica was there, but his mother, I think she had, distant relatives. She had a family around her, but not her son. And already her other son had died.
Yeah.
But he didn't go back. And I'm sure that is one regret he still has.
Yeah, well, that dinner, right, you got really mad at him and you were yelling at him because he didn't show any compassion for like his father dying. He didn't like show any emotions. and he just left. And then the next day he called, and I think he tried to explain it to you, right?
Yes. I mean, this was how it kind of went, that he would regroup and he would think back on what I'd said to him. And it's like, it's not like a normal relationship. I mean, I love my father deep down, but he preferred Meinhardt over me. That was his brother. And always set up a competition between the two boys, whether it was picking a handful of flowers and how big is it? Okay, Meinhardt won again.
Yeah, right.
So he just always felt like, okay, I'm down again. I'm down again. And so I think really now he sees the advantage to all of that it made him a driver, that it got him out of Austria into Germany, into the United States. And he really just has that drive that we all recognize totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how, those initial things with his father and his brother drove him so much? Because that's what, in the bodybuilding community, that's what we've always admired about Arnold, was how driven he was, how much of a winner he was, how he would win at all costs, even if he had to psych out his opponents or whatever. But it was amazing that was the initial thing, was his relationship with his dad, and the way his dad preferred his brother over him. And then drove him to such extent where he just, for years, I mean, it wasn't just a short-term thing. It was for years, he drove himself that hard to be the winner.
Right. And one thing that really always stunned me is after he would win every year, it was like, oh, but wait till next year.
Right.
Like, well, wait a minute. Why don't you just love and appreciate that all of your hard work this year amounted to another title?
Yeah.
No, just wait till next year. So I think that is kind of typical of somebody who strives, that you don't live in the moment of now and you don't get it. This moment now, I just won. Well, who cares? I'm living into the future again. And, we all change as we mature, but that was definitely a driver at that point. Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of bodybuilders, and it seems like that's a common theme with a lot of them, is they don't appreciate the win when it happens. They're always like thinking about the next time.
Right.
Just enjoy it. And then years later, when they get older, they're like, wow, I really would have wished I would have enjoyed that when I was at my peak and I was looking so good. I just wish I enjoyed that victory,
I mean, it's so special.
Yeah.
You competed and you were looked upon by millions and you don't get it?
Yeah.
No, next year. And Frank Zane, again, I mentioned him again. He was a psychologist and a Buddhist in his heart.
Yeah.
And he really had studied that most bodybuilders had a bad relationship with their father. And so that's why you might have met the same pattern when you interviewed winners. It's like, no, it's going to be next time. I'm going to prove, and maybe to the father or who knows what, but it's the old kicking the sand in the face, that they really need to prove themselves, and yet they don't get that they just proved themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that a lot of bodybuilders had bad relationships with their fathers, or they long for their father's attention, and the way they literally build themselves up more masculine in order to get approval,
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
And Mitz from Hawaii, he also was telling you that too, right? That Arnold's relationship with his father is what really was the driving force in his life.
Right, exactly. And Mitz was another father figure. And Dot.
Right.
They were just a beautiful Hawaiian couple, and he met them over, through a bodybuilding, little, not a contest, but an exhibition.
Exhibition, yeah. The one him and Dave Draper went out. Yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Did Arnold ever talk about the competitions he was in? Because you were with him during his pretty much his whole career, from when he got here in 68 all the way up until 75 when he retired. So did he ever talk about like Sergio Oliva or some of these other guys that he was going up against?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was that typical almost teenager gossip of, I'm going to beat him, and, all of that. Now, he loved the local guys at Gold's. But let's face it, even with Franco, they had a competition of how many reps they could do, so they had a loving, fake fighting relationship. And he was the same way with Louis Ferrigno, or now there was East Coast versus West Coast. And so all of you bodybuilders probably know that. And, his core was bodybuilders. And he loved them, but he wanted to beat them.
Yeah, yeah. You did mention also in the book when he went over to London, he competed against Reg Park, and you asked him about that, right? Because that really was upsetting that he beat his idol, right?
I know. Yeah, I don't think he didn't have the depth of emotion to really feel it and therefore express it. But he just said it was weird. It was weird. Well, okay, weird. Weird. Doesn't really say how would it feel to beat your idol, the one who absolutely motivated you to do this sport, and you beat him?
Yeah. Yeah, and they were friends too before that.
And after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Arnold's feeling was, why did he have to do this? Why do they have to compete? Why do I have to beat him, right?
Right, exactly, yeah.
So let's talk about later on when Arnold decides to get into, well, he eventually became more and more famous, right? Because you met Charles Gaines and George Butler, and then they decided to do Pumping Iron. What did you think of those two guys when you met them? Because they were from a whole different world, right?
Oh, they were East Coast, and they really thought that everybody from California was just on the lowest line of the totem pole, and that they were the elite.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, that's how we saw them, is that they were the elite. So Charles was from the South, and like Birmingham, and that's where he set Stay Hungry.
Yeah.
And then he ended up moving way north on the East Coast. And then George was from, I can't remember, but New Hampshire? Yeah,
I think
New Hampshire.
Right, you're right.
And so they just had a whole different edge on things. And they saw bodybuilding as this weird, surreality of, wow, I mean, you're dedicating your life to building muscles, but they set it in a real estate setting and made a good story. Well, that was Charles. No, yeah, George wasn't the writer, he was the photographer.
Right.
And so, yeah, I liked them, and it was a wonderful time. Every time they came out, it was just really beautiful. Now, here's an example of how backwards we were in California. I couldn't have imagined their budget. I mean, Arnold was on a budget. I was on a starving student budget. And so I kind of maintained that mentality because at that point I was either going to school to become a teacher, or I finally became a teacher. So I didn't have really disposable money. So I presumed that they didn't either. And so we set them up in Venice Beach Hotel. And so immediately when they checked in, they checked out and went to a more posh hotel in like Marina Del Rey or something. It's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah, and you said there was an interesting story in there when I think you guys went to New York in '73 for the Mr. Olympia. And you said that was one of the few contests you went to with Arnold, right? You only saw him compete.
Right.
Yeah. And I liked how you guys were going out to all these different places. Like you went to Brooklyn, I think, to see, was it Artie Zeller's family?
Art Zeller's mom. And so, yeah, we really got around, and then we went to, fancy restaurants, and we stayed in I think Hemingway had been famous for staying there.
Yeah, I remember. I just read that this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you said that
it was very exciting for me because of my literate background and just, well, it's not the New York it is today.
Right.
It was the New York of then, and it was just so exciting.
Yeah. And you said the people there were very high class, but Arnold, with his self-confidence, he didn't let it get to him at all. He was still having a good time.
And how can you have so much confidence? He just didn't care.
Right.
And now inside, maybe was he covering up and bluffing it, but I just don't think so.
Right. And he was always like that, right, Barbara? From the first time you Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we met, he was just like really confident to meet, a kind of, in his mind, an upper class girl. And forget that I'm a country bumpkin from Austria. He didn't care.
Right.
He just had so much confidence in his personality and his wit and his potential. I think that's maybe. Well, I know that working out in a gym, and you probably can relate to it, that it just gives you a confidence to have mastery of your body.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that then. I mean, I just came from a Pilates class just now. So I know now what it's like to have more of a mastery over my body than I did then. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's what gave him such utter confidence.
Yeah, that's really what separated Arnold, I think, from a lot of other bodybuilders was I think a lot of bodybuilders, they build up this wall of muscle, to feel more secure, but inside they're really insecure. And I think what happens when you get to these contests, you can see that a lot. But Arnold always had this great confidence in himself. Was he like that when you first met him when he was 22?
Yeah, at least the way I could read it from them.
Yeah.
He just was always confident of everything he said, everything he did, every purchase that he made. He was totally frugal to save up money for eventually his first apartment complex where he could live in the manager's apartment.
Okay.
I mean, who does that?
Right. Was that a plan of his? Was from the first time you met him? Did he envision that coming up later, or did that?
I think he, because of Joe Weider and even Ben Weider, he was surrounded by very successful businessmen, and in the council of that, John Balick, he just learned that you need to invest and don't care about your immediate gratification. Just invest for the future so that you can expand and grow and grow. Yeah.
And then the one business deal that you went into in the book was where he was finally going to come out with his training courses. And Gene Mosé, I think, told you, the way to do it is you advertise the courses first in the magazine, wait for the money to come in, and then that money pays for the courses, to actually get the courses done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I was definitely a part of that, but I didn't really understand the whole mechanics of it.
Yeah.
It's like, but Arnold, it's been a year. They're writing you letters. They want their courses. And, he hit upon stumble after stumble after stumble to get each of those books done.
Yeah.
And, the writing of it, the editing of it, the right photographs for it.
Right.
It was just pretty much a nightmare.
Yeah.
But in the end, they kept bringing in money, and most people were pretty patient. That it took a year to get the courses.
Yeah. And you helped him around that, right? Because you helped him design a letter that you were writing to all the people and saying, these courses are coming eventually, right?
Right. It's like you have to communicate with these people. You have to explain.
Yeah.
And really, it's amazing how when I met Jack LaLanne later, I related because as a kid I had bought some gizmo from Jack LaLanne.
Right.
And so I told him when I first met him, I said, what's really funny is that I sent away for blah, 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 and I never got it. Well, why didn't you let me know? I would have sent it to you. And so it was kind of bonding at that point. We really had a very special connection, and I completely forgave him that he didn't send my gizmo.
Right. Yeah, it was great to read through the book how more and more successful Arnold became through the years, right? I mean, he did the mail order courses, and then he was doing the posing exhibitions, and he was getting a lot of money for that back then. And he just led this really great life where he was training, going to the beach, and he didn't work a regular job, and then he would just, travel here. He was traveling all around the world. And you were staying at home, and you were working these menial jobs that you hated, right?
Right. Yeah, no, it was really hard to live two different lifestyles when you're supposedly a couple, and he would go around to Australia and to England and Belgium and back to Austria and Mexico, and it just didn't matter where he'd go, but I'm home. I'm either studying to become a teacher or I'm a teacher.
Right.
And so that was hard because in that age, I really wanted to travel. Now, he'd always bring back beautiful gifts for me, and so it wasn't like he totally forgot me while he was away, but and then for doing really nothing, just posing,
right?
Like that's what he does all the time anyway. He got paid.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, the courses were bringing in money, and so all of it was accruing. And he just never looked back. He knew more would be there. Now, the Charles Gaines offer to be in the movie, that was a fluke. That he knew, if they'd only known, I would have acted for free. Because really, I mean, that was just a huge opportunity.
That was his ticket, yeah. Yeah.
And, remember he'd had that little movie, Hercules in New York, where they changed his name to Arnold Strong.
Right.
And really, that was kind of pathetic.
Yeah.
And so you can't count that as his opportunity.
Yeah.
But here, this was a first-class deal.
Yeah. How did he feel about that? Because you were dating him during that time, right? He went away to New York while you were dating him. Did he think that movie was going to do anything for him, or did he just look at it as just a weird opportunity at the time?
No, because again, of his drive, Steve Reeves had been in movies.
Right.
So I can be in movies.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I'm going to be in movies.
Yeah.
And I will do a really good job. I will pour my heart into my fiddling lessons, and I know how to do the bodybuilding in the film, and I will take accent removal classes. Well, those didn't work really very well. But he refused to change his name.
Yeah.
And I don't know. He just, again, was back to the confidence game. It's just like, I will rack up one thing after another. And, it's all people. So the networking of the Hollywood industry, he is likable.
Mm-hmm.
So from Rafelson to the directors of Conan, I mean, they just really liked him. They wanted to be around him. And they obviously saw that if they didn't have a script that was, filled with too many words, he could do it.
Yeah. Do you think if right around that time he made Hercules in New York, if somebody would have came up to him and said, I want to offer you like 5 Hercules movies, do you think he would have given up bodybuilding at that time and just did the movies? Or do you think he would have kept going after the bodybuilding?
That's a tough one, because there would have been his dream, but he would have lost out being the best bodybuilder of all time.
Yeah.
And would he have known that? I mean, the hypotheticals are always hard to answer because you just don't know which way. But he would have loved the opportunity. But I don't know. My sense is he would have continued on and said, I will still have a great body in 5 years. Check with me then. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Lou Ferrigno kind of faced that opportunity, right? Because he was on the verge of winning the Mr. Olympia. He probably would have won it after Arnold retired. And then they offered him that Incredible Hulk TV show, and he took that.
Right.
That ended up being 5 or 7 years. And then by the time that ended, it was too late for him to go back into competition.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, Lou's like a bodybuilder at heart. I wonder if he sometimes regrets that, if he could have done Mr. Olympia one day,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's always about money, because how do you make money as a bodybuilder? It's so costly to eat and to train.
Right.
And so Lou probably made the right decision to
I think so too.
get the residuals, in his pocket. So I think, we occasionally communicate, and he's happily living in California. So
Yeah. Bodybuilders aren't the most practical people, though. So sometimes, I wonder if
yeah.
you made the right decision. One thing also in the book that was really interesting was you were really honest about Arnold's personality, how he was such a winning personality, and he would love parties, and he would kind of make fun of people, but everybody loved it. But then sometimes he would also be insensitive, right? And you had some problems with that with him.
Right. Yeah, there was a streak. I mean, anybody who knows him just knows that there was this just mean streak. And he lacked compassion. I mean, it was in a moment, I can't speak to that if he meant it. He just was going for the joke. That was the important part, is that if I put this person down, or if I tease Barbara that she's just in a bad mood because of her period, then I can lift myself up because of the joke. I made people laugh.
Right.
And so I just many, many, many times, I think I might have made a difference in his life to say, you cannot do this. You cannot do this to me. That is not nice. And he finally heard it. But, I know that over his time, he still had that characteristic. And who does he now? I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to ask, during your time together, did you see him change at all? Did he mature as you got toward the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was the old proverbial, diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
And so he did smooth out. I mean, Reg Park, his idol, would say, thank you for your influence on him. He is definitely way more of a gentleman than he was when I first met him. And so, but I think even now he continues to soften and grow. And I'm sure he's becoming a much softer, kinder, more appreciative man. He's just had too many hardships in life. So that kind of kicks you down a notch and makes you a little bit more compassionate.
Right. Did you show Arnold the book when you finished it to him? You showed him, right, before he wrote the foreword to it.
Well, I physically did not, give him the book, but I think through his office, he had a business person there, and I was really close with the secretary at the time. So I left or sent, I probably sent a book to him. And, to this day, do I know if he's ever read it? I'm not so sure. He's never quite admitted that to me.
Well, I think in the foreword he says, I realized after reading some of this that I was insensitive to Barbara many times, and he almost said like he didn't really realize that at the time,
Well, right. I mean, it's like, yeah, but Arnold, I had diaries, so all of this is true.
Yeah.
I mean, that was then. Okay, subjectively, I wrote it in my diary.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what happened then. So as much as you can have an objective book, which is absolutely not possible, right, I made it as objective as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And so he definitely was given a summary of the book, or he read snippets of it. And he's like, wow, I can't believe that this is her truth.
Yeah.
And so,
well, it sounds like you really made a difference with his relationship with his mother, because after his father died, one of the things you said to him was, what about your mother? She doesn't have a son anymore, Meinhard, and now her husband dies, and I think he said, well, she's with relatives, she'll be fine. And I think you kind of, told him, you need to be there for her now, because she's the only remaining member of the family.
Right, exactly. It's like, come on, she's a mother. That's her identity, is a mother and a wife. And she doesn't have those now because her one living son is in California.
Yeah.
So he started bringing her out to our place. And so, maybe then it was like 3 weeks at a time. But then eventually, I think she came out like 3 months out of every year and stayed with he and Maria.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that was a real loss when he lost her. I think that was, the love of his life.
Yeah. Right. That's tough. when you finally come around to your maturity and you realize all that your parents did for you, even if you can still criticize, you know, especially his father's character, but still, they're your parents.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt bad for Arnold last year when Franco died because I know how close they were for so many years. That was his life.
Yeah, I probably felt, you know, I think so. I felt worse with Franco dying than even his mother, you know, because she's older. You know these things happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I know Franco was older, but come on, he was kind of like young.
Yeah, I was totally shocked. I think everybody in the bodybuilding world was shocked because we always saw him as just this vibrant personality, and I thought he was going to be one of those guys that was going to live to be 100. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Naturally, he really might have. It's just so weird.
Yeah, it was. It was a shock to everybody.
Yeah.
Was there I remember reading, I think in his book, Arnold's book, that you and your girlfriend were taking these like meditation classes or positive thinking classes, and then Arnold got into that also.
Yeah, it was like
that was in the 70s, right? That was the craze back then.
Right, in the early 70s, well, the Beatles, and they introduced the Maharishi. And right in UCLA, well, near Westwood, there was a little center. And so we both went there together and learned this meditation. And I found it so interesting that when we got into the car, that I said, okay, so what's your mantra? And we're not supposed to tell that to anybody.
Right.
But we found out that we had been given the same mantra. Now, I don't know the game in a larger sense to say that there are very few mantras and this is who they give it to everybody. But I just found it so bonding that we were given that same mantra, you know.
So did Arnold get into that too?
Not as much as I did. I think he gave it a try for a week or two, but you know, it's too passive.
Yeah.
It's not like he's hyperactive. Well, I don't know. Is he hyperactive? Never really thought about that before. He's just doing, but he's not with a hyper state of doing it. But sitting there quietly for 20 minutes and repeating a mantra over and over and over again, I just think that would never be him.
Right. That's more Frank Zane. I know Frank Zane gets in.
Yes. Frank meditation. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the real problem, I guess, with your relationship with Arnold was the marriage thing, right? You wanted to be traditional and get married, and he kept putting it off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he found one beautiful excuse after the other. Why? We have the best relationships that we could possibly have. So why would you want to change it? And it's like, well, because I want children. I don't want children out of wedlock. And anyway, it was always the same thing. Not now, when after the contest. I mean, after, 6 years, it's like, okay, I'm not buying that excuse anymore. And what's interesting is that we finally called it. Like, this is not because of not loving each other, but this is because we are on different paths. So, bye-bye, and we'll be friends.
Yeah.
And, but then, I don't know how long it took for him to meet his next girlfriend, maybe a year. And then they were together a year or two. And then Maria came right in on the step of that. And I think they were together for like another 6 or 7 years before he married her.
Right.
It's like, are you kidding me? You really don't want to marry. But he told me that, some older friend said, you got to have everything in life. You've just got to have an experience of a marriage, experience with children. You just have a full life that's going to make your life better yet. And so it sunk into him, and he thought, okay, I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think that was Jim Lorimer that told him that he needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he also said that he didn't want to get married until like his father, until he was like almost 40, right?
Right. And so 25. I mean, he wasn't as old as his father. But
38 or something, yeah. Yeah.
He approached it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what was the final break?
And why would that be? I mean, why is the role model there your father?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. That was crazy.
Yeah. Maybe his father was more of an influence than he would admit to, right?
Yeah, right.
So when did you guys break up then, Barbara? Was it when he went off to make Stay Hungry? Because you realized then, okay, he's not going to stop. You waited for the bodybuilding thing to be over with, and then that finally ended, and now he's off to his next career, his next path.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, probably about a month or two before my driving him to the airport to film Stay Hungry.
Okay.
We just had the old, call to Jesus moment where it's like, okay. I mean, I could tell the story, but my colleague friends really meant a lot to me because I was finally teaching.
Uh-huh.
And we were in East Los Angeles. And I said, how about, you come to the end of the party with me and we'll just leave from that night to go down to Palm Springs. And I thought it was a good plan. And we went to Palm Springs often. And why would I want to go to a party with your friends? It's like, say that again. And so I kind of got the words out of him again. And it's like, if you don't care about me as a human being, that there is no value in this relationship. And the next week, we were supposed to fly down to Mexico to have a vacation, opposing exhibition. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't go. I mean, we broke up. We just said, no, this is going to end with this trip. Now, I continued to live with him until he left. And then I continued to live there for like the 2 months that he was filming in Birmingham. Okay. And then I was ready to move out by the time he returned.
Wow.
But we did maintain, I don't even know how over this whole lifetime we have maintained a friendship. To me, that's one of the most staggering things that I fathom,
Because that was a 6-year relationship, right?
You're right. And it's very hard to flip that on a dime to just become friends.
Right. Now, when you go out with someone like Arnold, who's so magnetic and he's so charismatic and he's so driven, how was your dating life after that, after you start dating other like normal guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, again, that's the definition of my life. And funnily enough, Arnold was just totally compassionate to my tragic stories because either they couldn't handle that my former lover had been Arnold. And there was a lot of intimidation with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then also he was handsome and he was funny and he was intelligent. How do you put that package into somebody?
Right.
So I just really, I don't even want to go back into my marital life, but a lot of flops.
Yeah.
And so, I've been married, 27 years now. So, thank goodness this has worked, but It just took a long time to get there.
Right. What did you think when you saw Arnold going into the movies then? And, especially when he did Conan, and then he's really getting the superstar status where everybody in the world knows who he is now.
Right. And he was on every billboard. He was on every night talk show.
Oh, yeah.
I could not get rid of him. In fact, my husband kind of referred to him as the booger. It's like, I can't get the booger off of me. He was everywhere.
Yeah. And
so I don't think people quite understand how much he's had to live within me for my whole life because of his fame.
Right.
And maybe at some level I thought, you better keep him in your life because it would be much harder to have him outside of your life and still be surrounded by him everywhere you go.
Yeah. Now you guys were still friends. Did you feel good for what he was doing for, for the achievement he was achieving?
For what?
Like when you saw Arnold achieving all this fame, did you feel good for him? Were you happy for him?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was, I've never been someone who has regrets of if only it had been me. Now people would put that on me.
Yeah.
Well, if you had been his wife, you would,
Yeah.
So yeah, I was always happy that he was achieving his dreams, and I was curious about it. And I wasn't jealous of it. I just admired that. Wow, I mean, you are like way beyond what you thought you'd be.
Right.
And I haven't seen all of his movies because, at some level they're kind of for 14-year-old boys. And so, but in the beginning, I would go to see the Conans, and that was surreal. To see him make love to Sandal Bergman was like, okay, this doesn't feel good. This is just weird.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you think Arnold would have been surprised if you would have told him when he was younger that this was the fame he was going to achieve later on in life?
I think so.
I know he thought big, but do you think even he would have been shocked at that amount of fame?
Yeah. How do you know that?
Yeah.
How can you know that you're going to be the highest paid action actor and all the real estate piled up on itself, and then to marry a Kennedy, and then to have, become governor of California?
Right.
No, it would. Now, he did tell me, and you know this from the book, but like about 10 years before he actually won the governorship, he dropped that on me once at lunch in Santa Monica. It's like, well, you just wait. I will be governor of California. It's like, no, you're not saying that.
Right.
I mean, that I couldn't believe.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't believe that he actually got it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've talked to a couple of bodybuilders who said, like, back in 68, 69, they were walking down the beach with him, and he said that. He said he was going to be a movie star, and then he was going to be a governor.
Well, yeah, and sometimes people have said even president. Well, you can't be president, not when you're, born in this country. But yeah, I know people have told me that, but he didn't tell me the governor thing until, oh gosh, I don't know. It was one of the years we met for lunch, and so I don't even know what year, but because when did he become governor? Like 2003
or something? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was like 1993.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, he's a fascinating individual, the way he's always used his drive and he's thought so far ahead. And he's, been so positive, and I think that's why he's so motivating for millions and millions of people around the world.
Yeah, and some people are really disappointed in him for the mistake he made in his marriage. Mm-hmm. But still in all, I mean, I follow some of the bodybuilding sites, and even when somebody posted about, oh my God, I just read this incredible book, Arnold and Me. Mm-hmm. But somebody I noticed posted like, yeah, I don't like him anymore. He disappointed me. And it's like, okay, well, everybody has their right.
Yeah.
And certainly that's been not a fatal flaw, but certainly a deep, deep flaw in him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm surprised even with that, it seems like people have kind of gotten over that. It wasn't the fatal flaw I thought it would be when it happened. No. I mean, it was to the end of his marriage. Yeah. But he's a very good parent to, what is his name? Lewis, maybe? And Joseph.
So Joseph.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like softened people. Like, well, he's a good father.
Right. Yeah, he took ownership of his mistake. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Not immediately, but when he got busted,
Yeah, right. All right, Barbara. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you, and this is the book for all of you out there who want to buy it. It was a great book. I'm glad I still got it, and I just read it again over the weekend. So, great job on that book, and thank you for joining us, Barbara. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I loved your stories, and I loved your book.
Thank you, John. Thank you, and hi to all the bodybuilders out there. Okay, all the legends.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Barbara. Take care.
Bye.